What if the bravest thing you could ever do in English is to ask for help? Not for a translation. Not for a grammar rule. For love. I dialed 911 not because someone was dying, but because my marriage was. And the woman on the other end of the line didn't speak perfect English either. Stay with me. This 90-minute story will change how you see mistakes, shame, and the courage to say, I need you. The call you never plan. Imagine your phone in your hand. Your thumb is hovering over 3 numbers. 911. You've never dialed them before. You've seen them on TV shows, in movies, the red button, the flashing lights, the calm voice saying what's your emergency? But this isn't an emergency. Not the kind with smoke or blood or someone who can't breathe. This is the other kind. The quiet kind. The kind that happens in a kitchen, at 11 p.m., after the kids are asleep, while your husband is sitting on the couch in the other room. And you haven't said a real word to each other in 3 days. 3 days of silence. Not peaceful silence. The heavy silence. The kind that feels like a blanket made of wet concrete. So why would anyone call 911 for that? Because I didn't know who else to call. My family was 8,000 miles away. My friends? I hadn't made many, because my English wasn't good enough, or so I told myself. And the one person I should have been able to talk to, my husband, was the person I was afraid of losing. So I sat on the kitchen floor. Cold tile. Late night. And I thought, if I call 911, they have to send someone. They have to listen. They can't hang up on me. That's how desperate I was. That's how lonely I felt. In a country where I had chosen to build a life, with a man I had chosen to love. I was so afraid of saying the wrong thing in English that I had stopped saying anything at all. You know that feeling, don't you? That moment when you're so scared of making a mistake that you just freeze. Your mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Your brain knows the words, but your throat won't let them through. That's not a language problem. That's a shame problem. And shame, my friend, is the real tornado. Let me back up a little. Before the 911 call. Before the cold kitchen floor. Before the silence. I came to America because I fell in love. Not with the country, with a man. A man who fixed things. A man who didn't talk much but listened with his whole body. A man who looked at me like I was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. We met in a coffee shop. He ordered a black coffee. I ordered something complicated with caramel and foam and a name I couldn't pronounce. He laughed, not at me, with me, and said, "That's a lot of words for a small cup." I laughed back. My English was broken then. It's still not perfect now. But that day, it didn't matter. Because love doesn't need perfect grammar. Love needs honesty. And I was honest. I was scared, but I was honest. Fast forward a few years. We got married. We had children. 2 of them. A boy and a girl. Beautiful, loud, messy little humans who spoke English like they were born in Kansas, because they were. And I was the only one in the house who hesitated. Who searched for words. Who sometimes just nodded instead of saying what I really felt. My husband never complained. He said, "Take your time. I'll wait." And he did. He always waited. But waiting isn't the same as understanding. And over time, the gap between what I wanted to say and what I actually said grew wider and wider. Not because my English got worse. Because my fear got bigger. Here's the science part, and I promise, it's simple. Your brain has something called the amygdala. It's the alarm system. When you feel threatened, the amygdala goes off. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. Your mouth goes dry. For most people, the amygdala goes off for real dangers. A barking dog. A car that swerves too close. A stranger in a dark alley. But for language learners? The amygdala can go off when you just think about speaking. Your brain treats a simple sentence like a life or death situation. That's why you freeze. That's why you forget the word for water when you're thirsty. That's why you nod and smile instead of saying I disagree. It's not weakness. It's biology. Your brain is trying to protect you from shame, from embarrassment, from looking stupid. But here's the catch, that protection is also a prison. And I was living in that prison. Every day. Every meal. Every conversation that ended too soon because I ran out of words. So one night, the night I almost called 911, I sat on that kitchen floor and I asked myself, what am I so afraid of losing? The answer came immediately, him. My family. This life. And then I asked myself the harder question, if I lose him because I was too scared to speak, what was I protecting? Nothing. I was protecting nothing. That's when I picked up the phone. Not to call an ambulance. Not to call the police. To call someone, anyone, who would listen without judgment. To prove to myself that asking for help is not weakness. It's the bravest kind of love. I dialed 9. Then 1. Then 1. And I waited. That's where I'll stop for now. Because in section 2, I'll tell you what happened next. What the operator said. What my husband did. And how a single phone call saved more than my marriage, it saved my voice. But for now, your English practice. Just one sentence. Repeat it slowly. Asking for help is not weakness. It is brave love. Say it again, asking for help is not weakness. It is brave love. Because that's the truth. And the truth is the only language we all understand. Pretending everything was fine. Let me tell you something embarrassing. For 2 years, I told everyone my English was fine. Oh yes, I understand everything. No problem, I can handle it. Thank you, I'm good. I was not good. I was drowning. But drowning people don't wave their arms and scream, that's a myth. Real drowning is quiet. You slip under the surface. You open your mouth, but no air comes out. And the people standing on the shore, 5 feet away, have no idea you're dying. That was me. At the grocery store. At the parent-teacher conference. At dinner with my husband's family, where everyone talked so fast I just smiled and nodded and hoped no one asked me a question. How was your day, honey? Fine. Do you want to go to the park tomorrow? Sure. What do you think about moving to a bigger house? Okay. One-word answers. Safe answers. Answers that didn't expose me. But also answers that didn't say anything real. My husband, Mark, noticed. Of course he noticed. He's not blind. He would look at me across the dinner table, his head tilted, his eyes soft. You seem quiet lately. I'm just tired, I'd say. And I was tired. Tired of translating every sentence in my head before I said it. Tired of worrying about verb tenses when all I wanted was to say I love you without checking if I was using the right preposition. Tired of feeling like a fraud, like everyone else had been given a script for how to be a wife, a mother, an American. And I was still making it up as I went along. Here's the thing about pretending. It works for a while. A week. A month. Maybe even a year. But pretending is like a credit card, you're borrowing happiness from the future, and eventually the bill comes. My bill came on a Tuesday. It was raining. Not the dramatic Kansas thunderstorm kind. Just a steady, gray, depressing drizzle. The kids were at school. Mark was at work. I was alone in the house, folding laundry, yes, again, folding laundry, and I realized something. I couldn't remember the last time I had said something true. Not the weather is nice, true. Not dinner was good, true. But true. Like, I'm scared. Or, I miss my mom. Or, sometimes I feel like I don't belong here, and it's not about the language, it's about me. I had stopped saying those things because I didn't have the words. Or I thought I didn't. But that's not really true, is it? You always have the words. You have some words. The problem is not the vocabulary. The problem is the shame. Let me explain. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it imposter syndrome. It's that voice in your head that says, everyone is going to find out you're a fake. You don't really speak English. You're just pretending. Imposter syndrome is not a language problem. Native speakers get it too. But for people learning English? It's 10 times worse. Because every mistake feels like proof. Every forgotten word feels like evidence. Every awkward pause feels like a confession. So you pretend. You say fine when you're not fine. You say sure when you mean I don't know. You say okay when you want to scream please just listen to me. And the people around you? They believe you. Because why wouldn't they? You said you were fine. You said you were okay. You said everything was great. So they go back to their lives. And you go back to your silence. That Tuesday, in the rain, I folded a blue towel. I have a thing with blue towels, apparently, and I thought about my daughter, Lily. She was 7 then. She spoke English like a little river, fast, clear, effortless. I loved listening to her. But I also felt a tiny, ugly knot of jealousy in my stomach. She could say anything. Mommy, I'm sad because my friend didn't share her crayons. Mommy, I'm mad because you said no to cookies. Mommy, I love you to the moon and back. Simple sentences. Perfect sentences. Not because her grammar was flawless, she was 7, she made plenty of mistakes. But because she wasn't afraid. She just spoke. The words came out, wrong or right, and the world didn't end. I wanted that. I wanted to speak like a 7-year-old. Not like a professor. Not like a poet. Like someone who trusted that her voice mattered, even if it stumbled. But I couldn't. Because somewhere along the way, I had learned that mistakes were dangerous. That saying the wrong thing could make people laugh at you, or judge you, or, worst of all, leave you. So I stayed quiet. And the quieter I got, the more Mark filled the silence. He talked about his day. He talked about the kids. He talked about the news, the weather, the broken sprinkler in the backyard. And I nodded. And I smiled. And I died a little inside. Do you know what the saddest part is? Mark never asked me to be perfect. He never corrected my grammar. He never laughed when I mixed up words. I once said I'm so constipated when I meant congested, and he just handed me a tissue and said, "You mean stuffy nose?" He was kind. He was patient. He was everything a partner should be. But his patience made it worse. Because I felt like I was letting him down. Like he deserved someone who could talk to him, really talk to him, about feelings and fears and dreams. Not someone who just said fine and okay and sure. That Tuesday, I folded the last towel. I put it in the closet. I walked to the kitchen. And I stared at my phone. I thought about calling my mom. But it was 3 a.m. in her country. I thought about texting a friend. But I hadn't texted anyone in months. I thought about waiting for Mark to come home and finally telling him the truth. But I didn't. Because the words wouldn't come. They were stuck. Trapped behind a wall of shame that I had built, brick by brick, over 2 years. So I did something else. Something I never thought I'd do. I picked up the phone. And I dialed 911. Not because someone was dying. Because I was dying. Quietly. Slowly. In a house full of love and laundry and blue towels. That's where we're going next. The call itself. The voice on the other end. And the 3 words that changed everything. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence out loud. Pretending is not protection. It is a prison. One more time, pretending is not protection. It is a prison. Because the only way out is to stop pretending. And that starts with one honest sentence. The cultural cracks. Have you ever noticed that Americans smile at strangers for no reason? I don't mean a polite lip twitch. I mean a full, teeth-showing, eye-crinkling smile at the person bagging their groceries or the jogger passing by. When I first moved here, I thought everyone was either exceptionally happy or secretly selling something. Turns out, it's neither. It's just culture. In my home country, you smile at people you know. Friends. Family. Maybe a neighbor you've spoken to for years. Smiling at a stranger? Suspicious. Weird. Why are you smiling? What do you want? But in America, not smiling can seem cold. Rude. Like you're angry or judging someone. So I learned to smile. I practiced in the mirror. Too much teeth? Not enough? I became a professional smiler. People thought I was friendly. Really, I was just terrified of being misunderstood. That's one small crack. A tiny hairline fracture in the foundation of a marriage. But small cracks, left alone, grow. Let me give you another one. In my culture, when someone asks how are you, you tell the truth. Not the whole truth, maybe. But something real. I'm tired. I'm worried about my mother. I had a bad day. In America, how are you? Is not a question. It's a greeting. The expected answer is good, you? That's it. Nobody wants to hear about your bad day at the grocery store checkout. I learned this the hard way. A cashier asked me how I was doing. I said, honestly, I'm a little sad today. I miss my family. The cashier froze. Her smile turned into confusion. She didn't know what to say. Neither did the person behind me. Awkward silence. I paid quickly and left, my face burning. After that, I learned the script. Good, you? That's all. No more. No less. But here's the problem. When you spend all day performing a script, smiling when you don't feel happy, saying good when you're not, you start to forget what's real. The performance becomes the person. And the person becomes empty. Mark didn't understand this. He was born here. To him, "How are you?" was just noise. He didn't think about it. He said good even when he was stressed or tired or had a headache. It wasn't lying. It was just the code. So when I stopped telling him the truth about my feelings, he didn't notice. Because he was used to the code. "How was your day?" "Good." "Anything wrong?" "No, just tired." That's what everyone says. Why would I be different? But I was different. I was dying inside. And the code was killing me. Here's another crack. The way Americans argue. In my family, arguments are loud. People interrupt. Voices rise. Hands wave. You say what you mean, even if it's harsh, and then you hug and move on. It's messy, but it's honest. Mark's family argues quietly. Politely, even. They say things like, "I feel frustrated when you do that," instead of "Stop doing that." They take breaks. They say, "Let's agree to disagree." To me, it felt like they were avoiding the real issue. To Mark, my loudness felt like an attack. So we stopped arguing. Because every time we tried, we just confused each other. I thought he was hiding his feelings. He thought I was yelling at him. Neither of us was wrong. We were just speaking different languages, not English, but the language of conflict. And when you stop arguing, you stop communicating. And when you stop communicating, you stop connecting. The cracks got deeper. Then there were the little things. The way Mark's family celebrated holidays. The way they ate dinner at 6 p.m. sharp, while my family ate when everyone arrived, even if that was 9 p.m. The way they said "I love you" every night before bed, which I thought was beautiful, but also felt like a script. The way they asked for space when they were upset, while I wanted to talk it out immediately. None of these things are bad. They're just different. But different, over time, becomes distant. I remember one night, we had a fight about something stupid. Dishes, probably. Or who forgot to pay a bill. I don't remember the details. I remember the silence afterward. Mark sat on the couch, staring at the TV but not watching. I stood in the kitchen, pretending to clean but just gripping the counter. I wanted to say, "I'm scared. I feel like we're drifting apart. Please hold me." What came out was, "Fine. Whatever." He said, "Okay." And we went to bed. On opposite sides. Not touching. That was a year before the 911 call. A whole year of sleeping on opposite sides of the bed. A whole year of fine and whatever and okay. A whole year of pretending that small cracks don't become canyons. Here's the science. Psychologists call it the demand/withdraw pattern. One person wants to talk, the demander. The other person shuts down, the withdrawer. The demander pushes harder. The withdrawer pulls away more. It's a dance. A terrible, marriage-killing dance. In cross-cultural marriages, this pattern is even worse. Because the demander and the withdrawer aren't just fighting about the issue. They're fighting about how to fight. And neither one knows the other's choreography. I was the demander. I wanted to talk, to yell, to cry, to fix it immediately. Mark was the withdrawer. He needed space, time, silence. To me, his silence felt like rejection. To him, my talking felt like pressure. We were both wrong. We were both right. And we were both miserable. That Tuesday, folding laundry in the rain, I finally admitted something to myself: these cracks are not going to fix themselves. And I don't know how to fix them. Because I don't even know which crack is mine and which crack is the culture. So I did the only thing I could think of. I stopped pretending. Not by talking to Mark. Not yet. I wasn't brave enough for that. I called 911. Let me tell you about that call in section 4. The voice on the other end. The words I never thought I'd say. And the moment I realized that asking for help is not surrender, it's the first step toward love. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. Small cracks, left alone, become canyons. One more time, small cracks, left alone, become canyons. Now, take a breath. Because in the next section, we pick up the phone. Love doesn't speak perfect English. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you said I love you in English and meant it so deeply that your chest hurt? Not because you had to. Not because it was bedtime or goodbye or the end of a phone call. But because the words were too big for your mouth and you said them anyway, even if they came out wrong. For me, that was the problem. I knew how to say I love you. 2 words. Simple. A child could say them. But I had stopped feeling them when I said them. Because I was so focused on saying them correctly that I forgot what they meant. Love doesn't need perfect grammar. Love needs presence. Love needs honesty. Love needs you to open your mouth and let the sounds fall out, even if they stumble. But I had forgotten that. I had spent so long trying to sound like a native speaker, no accent, no mistakes, no pauses, that I had lost my voice entirely. Not my English voice. My real voice. The one that laughs too loud and cries at commercials and says I'm scared without checking the verb tense first. Here's a strange fact. Studies show that people actually sound more authentic when they make small mistakes. A slight accent? Charming. A wrong word? Human. A pause to search for vocabulary? It shows you're thinking, not reciting. But we don't believe that, do we? We believe that perfection is safety. That if we can just get the grammar right, no one will judge us. That if we can just sound like them, they'll accept us. It's a lie. A beautiful, seductive, destructive lie. Because the people who love you, really love you, don't love your grammar. They love your laugh. Your kindness. The way you look at them when they walk through the door. The way you say I miss you in a voice that cracks because you mean it so much. Mark never loved me for my English. He loved me for the way I danced in the kitchen while making breakfast. For the way I sang off-key to our kids. For the way I cried during sad movies and pretended I wasn't crying. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I started believing that my accent was a problem. That my mistakes were embarrassing. That if I couldn't speak perfectly, I shouldn't speak at all. That's what made me pick up the phone. Because on that cold kitchen floor, I realized something. I would rather sound stupid and save my marriage than sound perfect and lose everything. So I dialed 911, and then I waited. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. And then a voice said, 911, what's your emergency? Her name was Diane. I didn't know that yet. I just heard a calm, tired, professional voice. The kind of voice that has heard everything: car crashes, house fires, heart attacks, and still shows up to work the next day. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Hello," she said. "Are you there?" "Yes," I whispered. "I'm here." "What's your emergency?" I took a breath. And then I said the scariest sentence of my life. "I don't know if this is an emergency. But I don't know who else to call. My marriage is falling apart, and I can't talk to my husband because my English is not good enough, and I'm so tired of pretending. And I just need someone to listen." Silence. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. It felt like an hour. Then Diane said something I will never forget. "Honey, your English sounds fine to me. Tell me what's going on." "Not ma'am." "Not sir." "Honey." Like I was her daughter. Like I was a human being, not a case number. I started crying. Not pretty crying. The ugly kind. Snot and sobs and words that came out in the wrong order. I told her about Mark. About the silence. About the cultural cracks. About the way I smiled at strangers but couldn't talk to my own husband. She listened. For 20 minutes. She didn't interrupt. She didn't tell me to call a therapist or a hotline. She just listened. And then she said, "Can I tell you something personal?" "Yes," I said. "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've heard people die. I've heard people give birth. I've heard people say goodbye to loved ones over the phone because they couldn't be there in person. And I'm telling you, what you just did. Calling 911 because you're scared of losing your marriage? That's not crazy. That's brave." I didn't know what to say. So I just cried harder. "You speak English just fine," she continued. "But even if you didn't, even if you could only say 10 words, love doesn't need 1,000 words. Love needs one. The right one." "What's the right one?" I asked. "Help," she said. The word help is the bravest word in any language. That was my lesson. Right there. From a 911 operator in Kansas who had never met me and would never see my face. Love doesn't speak perfect English. Love speaks help. Love speaks I'm scared. Love speaks I don't know what to do but I'm not giving up. Those sentences are not grammatically perfect. They're not elegant. They're not the kind of thing you'd find in a textbook. But they're real. And real is what saves people. Now, here's the science. Researchers have studied what makes relationships survive hard times. The answer is not communication skills, although those help. The answer is willingness to be vulnerable. To say I need you without knowing if the other person will show up. To say I'm scared without knowing if they'll hold you or walk away. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the opposite. Weakness is hiding. Vulnerability is showing up anyway. That's what I did on that phone call. I showed up. Not perfectly. Not eloquently. But honestly. And Diane showed up too. A stranger. A 911 operator who probably had 100 other calls waiting. But she stayed with me. Because she understood something that I had forgotten: everyone needs help sometimes. And asking for it is the first step back to love. So here's your English practice for this section. 1 sentence. Say it out loud. Love does not need perfect English. Love needs brave words. Say it again. Love does not need perfect English. Love needs brave words. Because that's the truth. And the truth, my friend, is the only language that everyone understands. In section 5, I'll tell you what happened after I hung up. Did I call Mark? Did he come home? And what did I say to him, in my broken, imperfect, beautiful English? Spoiler, it wasn't perfect. But it was real. The night I almost gave up. You know that moment right before you do something irreversible? When your hand is on the door, or your finger is hovering over send, or you've already packed one bag and you're staring at the second one? That was me. 3 weeks before the 911 call. Not on the kitchen floor. In the garage. Sitting in the driver's seat of our old Honda. Engine off. Keys in my hand. The garage door closed. The kids asleep inside. Mark at work. And I was calculating. If I leave now, I can be at the airport by midnight. There's a red-eye flight. I have my passport. I have some cash. I can call my mom from the terminal and tell her I'm coming home. Home. That word felt like a lie. Where was home? The house I shared with Mark? The country I left 8 years ago? I didn't know anymore. What I knew was this: I was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind of tired that comes from carrying a secret too heavy for one person. The secret was simple. I don't belong here. I never did. And everyone is about to find out. That's the voice of shame. And shame, if you let it, will drive you to the garage at 11 p.m. with the keys in your hand. Let me rewind a little. The weeks before that night, things with Mark had gotten worse. Not dramatic. Not violent. Just cold. We had become roommates who shared a bed. We talked about the kids, the bills, the leaky faucet. We didn't talk about us. I tried, once. I said, "Mark, I feel like we're not okay." He looked up from his phone. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't talk anymore." "Not really." He sighed. "We talk every day. About the kids. About groceries. Not about us." He put his phone down. He looked at me. And then he said something that crushed me. "What do you want me to say?" "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "What more do you need?" He wasn't being mean. He was being honest. To him, presence was love. He showed up every day. He worked hard. He came home. He kissed the kids. He paid the bills. That was his language of love. But my language was different. I needed words. I needed "I see you." I needed "I'm sorry for the silence." I needed "tell me what's in your heart, even if it's messy." We were speaking different love languages. And neither of us knew how to translate. So I stopped trying. And the silence grew. That night in the garage, I wasn't thinking about love languages. I was thinking about escape. About how much easier everything would be if I just left. No more struggling with English. No more feeling like the foreign wife who couldn't keep up. No more pretending. I started the engine. Just for a second. Just to hear it. The rumble of the Honda. The vibration in the steering wheel. And then I turned it off. Because in that moment, I heard something. Not a sound. A thought. A very quiet thought that said, "If you leave now, you will spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you had stayed." That thought terrified me more than staying. So I got out of the car. I closed the garage door. I walked back into the house. The kids were still asleep. The house was still quiet. Nothing had changed. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't call Mark. I didn't pack another bag. I just went to bed. Alone. On my side. Staring at the ceiling. And I made a promise to myself, give it one more month. One more chance. And if nothing changes, then you can leave. That month changed everything. Not because Mark suddenly became a poet. Not because my English became perfect. But because I stopped pretending that I was fine. Here's the science. Psychologists called us the readiness to change. You can't force someone to change. But you can reach a point where the pain of staying the same is greater than the fear of change. That night in the garage was my tipping point. The pain of pretending finally outweighed the fear of speaking up. But here's the tricky part. Even when you're ready to change, you don't always know how. I knew I had to talk to Mark. But every time I tried, the words got stuck. My throat closed up. My heart raced. My brain went blank. That's the amygdala again. The alarm system. It doesn't care that you're ready to change. It only cares that you're scared. And it will do anything to keep you silent. So I needed help. Not from a therapist, I couldn't afford one. Not from a friend, I didn't have any close enough. From someone neutral. Someone who wouldn't judge. Someone who had nothing to lose. That's when I remembered something Diane, the 911 operator I hadn't even met yet, would later tell me, the bravest word in any language is help. But that night, I hadn't called Diane yet. I was still alone. Still scared. Still sitting on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my marriage was already over and I was just the last one to know. Here's what I did. I wrote a letter. Not to Mark. To myself. I wrote, you are not a failure because your English is not perfect. You are not a bad wife because you don't know how to fix this. You are a human being who is trying. And trying is enough. I read that letter every morning for a week. Out loud. In my broken English. In my quiet voice. To the empty kitchen. And slowly, something shifted. Not the marriage. Me. I stopped apologizing for my accent. I stopped saying sorry before every sentence. I started letting the words come out, even if they were ugly, even if they were wrong, even if Mark looked confused. The first real thing I said to him was not romantic. It was at breakfast. He asked if I wanted more coffee. I said, no. But I want to talk. Not about the kids. About us. And I don't know the right words. So you have to be patient. He put down his coffee cup. He looked at me. And he said, okay. I'm listening. 3 words. Okay. I'm listening. That was his first brave sentence. We didn't fix everything that morning. We didn't fix anything. But we started. And starting is the hardest part. In section 6, I'll tell you about the actual 911 call. What happened when I finally dialed those 3 numbers? What Diane said. And how a stranger's voice gave me the courage to stay. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence out loud. Giving up is not the same as being brave. Staying and trying, that is brave. One more time, giving up is not the same as being brave. Staying and trying, that is brave. Because you're still here. Still trying. Still reading. That's not nothing. That's everything. Calling 911 for love. Let me take you back to that kitchen floor. Cold tile. 11:15 p.m. The house so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming and my own heartbeat. The phone was in my hand. Not a smartphone with 1,000 apps, just a basic phone. The kind you call people with. And I had already dialed the numbers. 911. My thumb was hovering over the green call button. One tap. That's all it would take. One tap and my life would change. Either I would get help, or I would embarrass myself so badly that I'd have to move to another state. Honestly, I was hoping for the second option. At least then I'd have an excuse to leave. But here's the thing about desperation. It makes you do things you never thought you'd do. Like calling emergency services because your marriage is dying and you don't have the words to save it. I pressed the button. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. And then a voice. Not a robot. A real person. A woman. Her voice was calm but not cold. The kind of voice that has heard everything and still chooses to be kind. 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. My throat was dry. My hands were shaking. The words were there, in my head, in my heart, but they wouldn't leave my mouth. Hello, she said. Are you there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. What's your emergency? I took a breath. A deep, shaky, pathetic breath. And then I said the scariest sentence I have ever said in English. I don't know if this is an emergency. But I don't know who else to call. My marriage is falling apart. And I can't talk to my husband because my English is not good enough. And I'm so tired of pretending. And I just need someone to listen. Silence. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. It felt like the longest silence of my life. Then she said something that broke me open. Honey, your English sounds fine to me. Tell me what's going on. Not ma'am. Not sir. Not please state the nature of your emergency. Honey. Like I was her daughter. Like I was a human being who was hurting, not a case number. I started crying. Not the pretty, movie-style crying where a single tear rolls down your cheek. The ugly kind. The kind where you can't breathe and your nose runs and you make sounds that don't sound human. And Diane, I learned her name later, just waited. She didn't rush me. She didn't say calm down. She just breathed with me. In and out. In and out. After a minute, or maybe 10, I don't know, I started talking. The words came out in the wrong order. My grammar was terrible. I said I feel lonely as lonely feel I. I mixed up tenses. I forgot words and described them instead, the thing you put food in to keep it cold, because I couldn't remember refrigerator. Diane didn't correct me. She didn't laugh. She just listened. I told her about Mark. About the silence. About the cultural cracks. About the night in the garage with the keys in my hand. About the letter I wrote to myself. About how I was scared that my children would grow up thinking their mother was quiet because she didn't love them. Not because she couldn't find the words. I told her everything. Things I had never told anyone. Not my mother. Not my best friend back home. Not even myself, out loud. And when I finally stopped, exhausted and empty, Diane said something I will carry to my grave. Can I tell you something personal? Yes, I said. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've heard people die. I've heard people give birth. I've heard people say goodbye to loved ones over the phone because they couldn't be there in person. And I'm telling you, what you just did. Calling 911 because you're scared of losing your marriage? That's not crazy. That's brave. I didn't know what to say. So I just cried harder. You speak English just fine, she continued. But even if you didn't, even if you could only say 10 words, love doesn't need 1,000 words. Love needs one. The right one. What's the right one? I asked, my voice cracking. Help, she said. The word help is the bravest word in any language. Because when you say it, you stop pretending you're okay. And that's the only way anyone can actually help you. I sat there on that cold kitchen floor, phone pressed to my ear, and I realized something. I had been trying to save my marriage alone. In silence. With perfect English that I didn't have. And it wasn't working. But I didn't need perfect English. I just needed one word. Help. Now, here's the science. Psychologists have studied what makes people reach out for support. The biggest barrier is not lack of resources. It's shame. We don't ask for help because we think we should be able to handle it ourselves. We think asking makes us weak, or needy, or broken. But here's the truth they've discovered, asking for help actually strengthens relationships. When you ask someone for help, you're not burdening them. You're trusting them. And trust is the foundation of love. Diane didn't feel burdened by my call. She felt trusted. And that's why she stayed on the phone with me for 20 minutes, even though she probably had other calls waiting. What do I do now? I asked her. You hang up this phone, she said. And then you go find your husband. And you say one sentence. Not a speech. One sentence. The truest one you can think of. What sentence? That's for you to figure out, she said. But I'll give you a hint. It starts with I need. I thanked her. I hung up. And I sat there for another 5 minutes, staring at the wall, trying to find my one sentence. Then I stood up. I walked to the living room. Mark was asleep on the couch, TV still on, remote in his hand. He looked tired. He looked sad. He looked like a man who had also been pretending. I knelt down next to him. I touched his arm. He opened his eyes. And I said my one sentence. Not perfectly. Not eloquently. But truly. I need you to help me find my voice again. He blinked. He sat up. He looked at my face, my swollen eyes, my red nose, my messy hair. And then he said something I didn't expect. I never knew you lost it. That's where I'll stop for now. Because in section 7, I'll tell you what happened next. How Mark responded. How we started rebuilding. And how a 911 operator named Diane became the unlikely hero of our love story. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. The bravest word in any language is help. One more time, the bravest word in any language is help. Because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. The operator who listened. You might be wondering, what kind of 911 operator stays on the phone with a woman crying about her marriage for 20 minutes? A good one. A human one. Someone named Diane. I didn't ask for her name during the call. I was too busy sobbing. But a few days later, I called back, not to report an emergency, but to thank her. The supervisor said, "You mean Diane? She's been here forever. She's the one everyone wants when things get bad." I never met Diane in person. I don't know what she looks like. But I think about her all the time. Because she taught me something that no textbook, no teacher, no language app could ever teach. She taught me that listening is a form of love. Think about that. In a world where everyone is trying to talk, to be heard, to prove something, Diane just listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She didn't say, "You should do this," or "Why didn't you do that?" She just made space for my messy, broken, imperfect words. And in that space, I found my voice again. Here's the thing about listening. Most people don't know how to do it. They listen to respond. They listen to fix. They listen to compare. You say, "I'm sad," and they say, "Oh, I was sad too last week, let me tell you about it." That's not listening. That's waiting for your turn to talk. Diane didn't do that. She listened like I was the only person in the world. Like my broken English was the most important thing she had heard all day. And that, my friend, is a superpower. There's science behind this. Psychologists call it active listening. It's when you give someone your full attention, not just your ears, but your presence. You nod. You make small sounds like hum or I see. You don't interrupt. You don't offer solutions unless asked. Active listening does something magical to the human brain. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. It releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical. It makes the speaker feel safe, seen, and understood. That's what Diane did for me. She didn't save my marriage. She didn't give me advice. She just made me feel safe enough to say the truth. And the truth, once spoken, cannot be unspoken. After I hung up with Diane, I sat on that kitchen floor for a long time. The tile was still cold. The fridge was still humming. But something had changed. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was empty. And emptiness, I realized, is just space for something new. I stood up. I walked to the living room. Mark was asleep on the couch. The TV was playing some late-night show. The remote had fallen out of his hand. I knelt down. I touched his arm. He opened his eyes, those tired, kind, confused eyes. And I said my one sentence, "I need you to help me find my voice again." He blinked. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. "What do you mean?" "I've been pretending," I said. "Pretending my English is fine. Pretending I'm okay. Pretending I don't miss my family every single day. Pretending I'm not scared that you'll get tired of me because I can't say what I feel." The words came out fast. Not perfect. But real. Mark reached out and took my hand. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "I never knew you were pretending. I thought you were just quiet." "I am quiet," I said. "But not because I have nothing to say. Because I'm scared of saying it wrong." He pulled me onto the couch. He wrapped his arms around me. And he said something that broke me open again, but in a good way. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here. I married you, not your English." I cried again. But this time, the tears were different. They weren't tears of loneliness. They were tears of relief. That night, we talked for 2 hours. Not about the kids or the bills or the leaky faucet. About us. About our fears. About the cultural cracks we had been ignoring. About the night I sat in the garage with the keys in my hand. Mark cried too. I had never seen him cry before. He told me he was scared too, scared that he wasn't enough, that he didn't know how to help me, that his silence was pushing me away. I don't know how to say the right things, he admitted. My family never talked about feelings. We just did things. Fixed things. I thought if I worked hard and came home, that was enough. It is enough, I said. But sometimes I need words too. I don't have the words, he said. Then just say that. Say I don't have the words, but I'm here. That's enough. And that became our new language. Not perfect sentences. Not eloquent speeches. Just small, honest phrases. I'm here. I'm scared too. Tell me more. I don't understand, but I want to. Those phrases saved us. Not because they were grammatically correct. Because they were true. Now, here's the lesson for you. You don't need a 911 operator named Diane. You don't need a perfect partner. You don't need to be fluent. You just need one person, one friend, one family member, one stranger on a helpline, who will listen without judgment. And you need the courage to say one true sentence. That sentence might be, I'm not okay. Or, I need help. Or, I'm scared of losing you. Or even just, help. Because as Diane said, help is the bravest word in any language. In Section 8, I'll tell you what happened in the days and weeks after that night. How Mark and I started rebuilding. How I finally stopped apologizing for my accent. And how my children became my unexpected English teachers. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. Listening is a form of love. And love does not need perfect words. One more time, listening is a form of love. And love does not need perfect words. Because the people who truly love you, they're not listening to your grammar. They're listening to your heart. My husband's response. The next morning, I woke up in our bed. Not on my side, alone. In the middle. Mark's arm was across my stomach. He was still asleep. His breathing was slow and heavy. I didn't move. I just lay there, watching the sunlight creep across the ceiling, and thought about the night before. I had told him everything. About the garage. About the keys. About the 911 call. About Diane. And he hadn't run away. He hadn't gotten angry. He hadn't said you're crazy or how could you do that? He had held me. He had cried with me. And then he had said the most unexpected thing of all. Why didn't you call me first? Not why did you call 911? Not what were you thinking? Just, why didn't you call me? I didn't have a good answer. So I told him the truth. Because I was scared you wouldn't understand. Or worse, that you would understand and still not know what to say. At least Diane is paid to listen. He laughed. A sad, tired laugh. I'm not paid to listen. But I'm your husband. That's supposed to mean something. It means everything, I said. But I forgot that. I forgot that you're on my team. That morning, after the sunlight woke him, Mark made coffee. 2 cups. He brought mine to the bed. Then he sat down next to me and said something that changed everything. I called in sick today. We need to talk. Not about the kids or the bills. About us. And I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me that next time you feel like calling 911, you call me first. Even if you don't have the words. Even if you just cry into the phone. I'd rather get 100 crying calls than one call from the hospital. I promised. And I meant it. But promises are easy. The hard part is keeping them. So we started practicing. Every day. Small conversations. Not about feelings, that was too big at first. About small things. About the weather. About a funny thing the kids said. About a memory from before we were married. Remember the first time we went to the diner? He asked. Yes. You ordered pancakes. I ordered something I couldn't pronounce. You pointed at the menu, he said, smiling. You just pointed. And the waitress understood. Because pointing is universal, I said. So is love, he said. You don't need to pronounce it perfectly. That became our game. Every day, we would find one thing that didn't need perfect English. A shared laugh. A hug. A look across the dinner table. A hand on a shoulder. And slowly, the silence started to fill. Not with perfect sentences. With small, imperfect, beautiful ones. Here's the science. Relationship researchers talk about bids for connection. A bid is any small attempt to get someone's attention. A question. A touch. A joke. A complaint. Anything that says I want to connect with you. When you respond to a bid, by turning toward the person, by acknowledging them, you build trust. When you ignore a bid, you erode it. For years, I had been ignoring Mark's bids. Not because I didn't love him. Because I was too scared to respond in English. A simple "How was your day?" felt like a test. What if I said the wrong thing? What if my answer was boring? What if he realized I wasn't interesting enough? So I gave one-word answers. Fine. Good. Okay. Those were not responses. Those were walls. After the 911 call, I started trying. Mark would ask, "How was your day?" And instead of saying fine, I would say something real. I was lonely today. I missed you. I felt proud because I helped a neighbor with her groceries and she understood my English. Every time I said something real, Mark would put down his phone. He would look at me. He would say, "Tell me more." Those 3 words, "Tell me more," became the most important English lesson I ever learned. Because they gave me permission to be imperfect. To stumble. To search for words. To say, "I don't know how to say this in English," and then try anyway. One night, about 2 weeks after the call, Mark came home from work with a small package. He handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was a notebook. Not fancy. A spiral notebook with a blue cover. "What's this for?" I asked. "For your voice," he said. Write down the things you can't say out loud yet. Or write them in your first language and then translate. I don't care. Just write. And when you're ready, read them to me. I cried again. I was crying a lot in those days. But these were good tears. I started writing that night. Not long essays. Sentences. 1 or 2 a day. Today I felt like I belonged here. Today I was scared that you're going to get tired of me. Today our daughter said I love you and I didn't have to translate it in my head. Today I called my mom and she said my English sounds beautiful. The notebook filled up. Not with perfect grammar. With truth. And every few days, I would read a page to Mark. He would listen. He wouldn't correct me. He would just say thank you for telling me. That's when I realized, my husband's response to the 911 call was not anger or disappointment. It was patience. It was presence. It was the quiet, steady love of a man who never stopped believing in me, even when I had stopped believing in myself. In Section 9, I'll tell you about the science of asking for help. Why our brains are wired to avoid it. And how you can train yourself to say help before you hit rock bottom. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. The bravest thing you can say is not I love you. It is I need you. One more time, the bravest thing you can say is not I love you. It is I need you. Because needing someone is not weakness. It's the foundation of every real relationship. Asking for help is brave. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you needed help and didn't ask for it? Be honest. Maybe you were lost in a new city and walked an extra 20 minutes instead of asking for directions. Maybe you didn't understand a word at work but nodded anyway. Maybe you wanted to say I don't understand to your partner but said it's fine instead. That's not stubbornness. That's your brain protecting you from shame. And it's doing a terrible job. Here's the weird thing about humans. We are social animals. Our brains are literally wired to live in groups. Without other people, we die. Literally. Studies show that loneliness is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And yet, when we need help the most, we clam up. We pretend. We suffer in silence. Why? Because asking for help feels like admitting failure. Like saying I can't handle this is the same as saying I'm worthless. That's not true. But it feels true. And feelings, as you know, are more powerful than facts. Let me give you the science. Psychologists have studied this for decades. They call it the threat of social rejection. Your brain processes social pain, shame, embarrassment, exclusion, in the same regions as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex. Fancy name. Same place that lights up when you burn your hand on a stove. So when you think about asking for help, your brain literally anticipates pain. It says, don't do that. You might get rejected. You might look stupid. You might lose status. Stay quiet. Stay safe. But here's the catch. Staying quiet doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. And stuck is not safe. Stuck is a slow death. That's what I learned from Diane, the 911 operator. She told me that the word help is the bravest word in any language. Not because it's hard to pronounce. Because it goes against every evolutionary instinct your brain has. Think about it. For thousands of years, humans who showed weakness were vulnerable. In a tribe, if you admitted you were sick or scared, you might be left behind. Your brain hasn't updated its software. It still thinks you're on the savannah, where asking for help could get you eaten by a lion. But you're not on the savannah. You're in a world where asking for help is how relationships deepen. Where vulnerability is the glue of love. Where saying I need you is the fastest way to make someone feel trusted and valued. So how do you override your brain's ancient wiring? You practice. Small steps. Tiny acts of brave asking. Start with something low stakes. Ask a stranger for the time. Ask a cashier where to find the butter. Ask a coworker to explain a word you don't know. The first time, your heart will race. Your palms will sweat. That's your amygdala screaming danger. But nothing bad will happen. The person will answer. You'll survive. Then you level up. Ask a friend for a small favor. Ask your partner to listen for 5 minutes without interrupting. Ask your child to help you with an English word. Kids love being the expert. Each time you ask, your brain learns, oh, that wasn't dangerous. Maybe I don't need to sound the alarm. Over time, the fear fades. Not completely, it never goes away entirely, but enough that you can speak. This is called exposure therapy. It's how psychologists treat phobias. You expose yourself to the thing you're afraid of, in small doses, until your brain realizes it's not actually a lion. I practiced this after the 911 call. Every day, I found one thing to ask for. Not big things. Small things. Can you pass the salt? To Mark. Easy. What does this word mean? To a neighbor. Scarier. I don't understand. Can you say it slower? To a cashier. Terrifying. The first time I asked a stranger to repeat themselves, my face turned red. My voice shook. But they didn't laugh. They just said sure and spoke more slowly. And I didn't die. My heart didn't explode. The world kept spinning. That's when I realized, the only person who thought my English was a problem was me. Here's another science fact. Studies show that people actually overestimate how negatively others will react to their mistakes. We think everyone is judging us. But most people are too busy worrying about themselves to notice your grammar errors. It's called the spotlight effect. You think there's a giant spotlight on all your flaws. But there isn't. The spotlight is in your head. And you can turn it off. After my 911 call, I started turning it off. Not all at once. But sentence by sentence. Request by request. And something beautiful happened. The more I asked for help, the more help I received. Mark started opening up about his own fears. My neighbor offered to practice English with me over coffee. A mom at the school pickup line asked for my help with something, which made me feel useful, not helpless. Asking for help is not a one-way street. When you ask, you give the other person a gift, the chance to be kind. And kindness, like vulnerability, is contagious. So here's my challenge to you today. Find one small thing to ask for. Not from me, from someone in your real life. A partner, a friend, a stranger, a cashier. Ask for help with something you've been pretending to handle alone. It can be as small as, can you hold this door, or as big as, can we talk? I'm not okay. Just ask. And notice what happens. Notice that you survive. Notice that the other person doesn't run away. Notice that asking, actually, feels a little bit like love. In section 10, I'll tell you how Mark and I rebuilt our trust, one word at a time. How we stopped being roommates and started being partners again. And how my children became my unexpected English teachers. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. Asking for help is not weakness. It is the bravest kind of love. One more time, asking for help is not weakness. It is the bravest kind of love. Because Diane was right. And now you know it too. Rebuilding trust, one word at a time. After that night on the couch, after the tears and the talking and the notebook with the blue cover, something shifted in our house. It wasn't dramatic. No music swelled. No one gave a speech. But the air felt different. Lighter. Like someone had opened a window in a room that had been sealed for years. Mark started coming home earlier. Not much. 15 minutes. But he would find me in the kitchen, put his hands on my shoulders, and just stand there. Not saying anything. Just being there. I started saying the small things out loud. Not the big feelings, those still felt too dangerous. But the tiny observations. I like this song. The sunset is pretty tonight. Our daughter's laugh sounds like bells. Stupid sentences. Beautiful sentences. Sentences that cost nothing but meant everything. Here's what I learned in those weeks. Trust is not rebuilt in grand gestures. It's rebuilt in the small, boring, everyday moments. The ones you don't put on Instagram. The ones you forget by Tuesday. But your brain doesn't forget. Your brain is counting. Every time you say something true and the other person doesn't hurt you, your brain makes a little note, safe. Every time you ask for help and receive kindness, another note, safe. Over time, those notes add up. And the wall of shame starts to crumble. Psychologists call this small repeated acts of bravery. Not jumping off a cliff. Just stepping off a curb. One small step. Then another. Then another. That's what we did. Mark and I. We stopped trying to fix everything at once. We just focused on the next right word. One night, we were washing dishes together, him scrubbing, me drying, and he said, "Can I ask you something weird?" Sure. What's a word in your first language that doesn't exist in English? I thought for a moment. Then I said, there's a word. It means the feeling of missing someone so much that your chest hurts. But it's not sad. It's also warm. Like the missing is proof that the love was real. What's the word? He asked. I said it. In my first language. It sounded strange in our English-speaking kitchen. Like a bird from another forest. Say it again, he said. I did. That's beautiful, he said. Can I try? He butchered it. Completely. The sounds came out wrong. He added syllables that didn't exist. It was hilarious. We laughed so hard we almost dropped a plate. And in that laughter, something healed. Because he wasn't mocking my language. He was trying to speak it. He was being vulnerable too. That's the secret that no one tells you about marriage, or about learning English, for that matter. Vulnerability is not a one-way street. When you show your cracks, you give the other person permission to show theirs. And cracks, when they line up, let the light in. The notebook Mark gave me became our family archive. I wrote in it every day. Not just about feelings, about everything. Today Leo said his first full sentence in English. I want more juice. Perfect grammar. I was so proud. Today I called the doctor's office by myself. I was scared. But the receptionist was nice. She said my English was good. Today Mark tried to cook my mother's recipe. He burned the rice. We ate it anyway. It was terrible. I loved it. After a few months, I let Mark read the notebook. All of it. The sad parts. The scared parts. The parts where I wrote about the garage and the keys. He read it slowly. Page by page. When he finished, he closed the book and looked at me. His eyes were wet. I didn't know you were hurting that much, he said. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I didn't let you see it, I said. I was too busy pretending. No more pretending? He asked. No more pretending, I said. And we shook hands. Like business partners closing a deal. Then we laughed at how stupid that was. Then we hugged. That was 3 years ago. We're still not perfect. We still have fights. I still forget words. Mark still retreats into silence when he's stressed. But now, when that happens, I don't assume the worst. I say, are you okay? Do you need space or do you need to talk? And he says, I need space. But I love you. I'll be back in an hour. That's the deal. That's the trust. Not that we never hurt each other. But that we always find our way back. Now, here's the lesson for you. Rebuilding trust, in a marriage, in a friendship, in your own ability to speak English, is not about being perfect. It's about being predictable. Showing up. Saying the small true things. Apologizing when you mess up. Trying again. Your brain doesn't need you to be fluent. It needs you to be consistent. 1 sentence a day. 1 honest word. 1 small act of bravery. That's how you rebuild. Not in a week. In a year. In a lifetime of small, boring, beautiful moments. In section 11, I'll tell you the biggest lesson I learned from calling 911. The thing that surprised me most. The truth that Diane gave me that I almost missed. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. Trust is not built in grand gestures. It is built in small, true words, day after day. One more time, trust is not built in grand gestures. It is built in small, true words, day after day. Because that's how you save a marriage. And that's how you learn a language. 1 word. 1 day. 1 brave moment at a time. What I learned from 911. A few months after the call, I finally worked up the courage to thank Diane properly. Not another phone call, I didn't want to interrupt her work. I sent a letter. Handwritten. In English. With a stamp and everything. I told her that our 20-minute conversation had saved my marriage. That her words about help being the bravest word had become a kind of scripture in our house. That Mark and I still said it to each other when things got hard. Do you need help? Not with the dishes. With the feelings. I never got a reply. I don't expect one. Diane probably gets hundreds of calls a week. She's busy saving lives in more obvious ways. But I like to think she smiled when she read my letter. I like to think she kept it in a drawer somewhere, next to her coffee mug and her worn-out headphones. Because Diane taught me something that no one else could. She taught me that asking for help is not a sign of brokenness. It's a sign of humanness. Let me say that again. Asking for help is not a sign of brokenness. It's a sign of humanness. For years, I thought my need for help meant I was weak. That if I were stronger, smarter, better at English, I wouldn't need anyone. I would be self-sufficient. An island. A rock. But islands are lonely. Rocks don't grow. And self-sufficiency, when taken too far, is just isolation in a fancy suit. Here's what I learned from 911. The emergency number is not just for fires and heart attacks. It's a symbol. A reminder that help exists. That someone, somewhere, is paid to pick up the phone and say, "What's your emergency?" and actually mean it. But you don't need to dial 911 to get that help. You just need to dial someone. Anyone. A friend. A family member. A coworker. A stranger on the internet. You just need to say the words. The words are simple. But they are not easy. I'm not okay. Can you listen? I need help. Why are those words so hard? Because they require us to admit that we are not in control. And control, my friend, is the great illusion of adulthood. We think we're supposed to have it all together. The perfect marriage. The perfect English. The perfect life. But no one has that. Not even the people on Instagram who look like they do. Especially not them. The people who look like they have it all together are often the ones who are most terrified of falling apart. They're the ones who need help the most and ask for it the least. I was one of those people. The smiling wife. The nodding immigrant. The woman who said fine when she was drowning. But Diane saw through that. Not because she's a mind reader. Because she's heard 1,000 versions of my story. The strong person who finally cracks. The quiet person who finally screams. The pretending person who finally says help. And every single time, she says the same thing, you did the right thing by calling. That's what I want you to hear today. If you are struggling, with English, with love, with life, you did the right thing by watching this video. By looking for a story that might help. By being here, right now, reading these words. You are not weak for needing help. You are human. Here's the science. Researchers have studied what makes people resilient, able to bounce back from trauma, loss, and failure. The number one predictor of resilience is not intelligence, not wealth, not even a positive attitude. It's social support. Having people you can call when things fall apart. Not people who will fix you. People who will sit with you in the rubble. People who will say that sucks. I'm here. Diane was that person for me, even though she was a stranger. Mark became that person for me, even though he was the one I was afraid of losing. And now, I try to be that person for others. A neighbor. A friend from my English class. A stranger in a Facebook group who writes I'm struggling. I don't have solutions. I have a story. And sometimes, a story is enough. So here's my question for you. Who is your Diane? Who is the person you can call when the silence gets too heavy? If you don't have one, that's okay. You can find one. A helpline. A support group. A therapist. A kind stranger on YouTube who leaves a comment that says you're not alone. And if you can't find anyone, then be that person for someone else. Be the Diane. Because helping others is also a form of asking for help. It reminds you that we're all in this together. The biggest lesson I learned from 911 is this: you don't have to wait until you're in the garage with the keys in your hand. You can ask for help long before that. You can ask for help when the crack first appears, not when the whole wall comes down. I wish I had called Diane earlier. A year earlier. 2 years earlier. But I didn't know how. I didn't know that it was allowed to ask for help with a broken heart, not just a broken bone. Now I know. And now you know too. In section 12, the final section, I'll tell you how our story ends. The happy ending. The lessons I still carry. And the one sentence that I want you to remember for the rest of your life. But first, your English practice. Say this sentence with me. You don't have to be broken to ask for help. You just have to be human. One more time, you don't have to be broken to ask for help. you just have to be human. Because that's the truth. And the truth, as Diane taught me, is the only emergency that matters. You can call for love too. So here we are. The end of the story. The last few pages of the blue notebook. You've been with me through the cold kitchen floor, the 911 call, the voice of Diane, the tears on the couch. The notebook full of imperfect sentences, and the slow, steady rebuilding of a marriage that almost broke. Now I want to tell you how it all turned out. And more importantly, I want to tell you what this story has to do with you. Mark and I are still married. 3 years after that call. We still have bad days. We still misunderstand each other. I still forget the word for refrigerator sometimes, and he still retreats into silence when he's stressed. But now, when those things happen, we have a code. A single word that stops the spiral. Help. That's it. 1 syllable. 4 letters. And when either of us says it, in the middle of an argument, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a crowded room, the other person stops whatever they're doing. Puts down the phone. Turns off the TV. And says, I'm here. What do you need? Sometimes the answer is just listen. Sometimes it's hold me. Sometimes it's help me find the word for the thing you put food in to keep it cold. And we laugh. Because after everything, we can still laugh. My English is still not perfect. I still have an accent. I still make mistakes. Just yesterday, I told a neighbor I'm so constipated when I meant congested. She laughed. I laughed. The world didn't end. Because I finally understand something that took me years to learn. Perfection is not the goal. Connection is. The goal is not to sound like a native speaker. The goal is to be understood. To understand others. To say I love you and have it land. To say I'm scared and have someone take your hand. That's it. That's the whole point of language. Everything else is just decoration. So why am I telling you this story? Not to impress you with my survival. Not to make you feel sorry for me. Not to show off my English, which, again, is still far from perfect. I'm telling you this story because I know something about you. I know that somewhere in your life, there is a silence you've been filling with pretending. A crack you've been ignoring. A fear you've been carrying alone. Maybe it's about your English. Maybe it's about your marriage. Maybe it's about your job, your health, your loneliness, your grief. I don't know the details. But I know the feeling. The heavy silence. The cold kitchen floor. The phone in your hand. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to wait until you're in the garage with the keys in your hand. You can call for help now. Not 911. But someone. Anyone. A friend. A family member. A therapist. A helpline. A stranger in a comment section who says I've been there too. The call doesn't have to be perfect. The words don't have to be eloquent. You can cry. You can stumble. You can say I don't know how to say this. That's okay. That's more than okay. That's brave. Because as Diane said, help is the bravest word in any language. And you, my friend, are brave enough to say it. Here's what I want you to do after this video ends. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Pick up your phone. Not to scroll. To text. To call. To message. Reach out to one person. It can be someone you trust. It can be a helpline. It can even be a comment on this video. I read every single one. And say one sentence. The truest sentence you can think of. It might be, I'm not okay. It might be, I miss you. It might be, can we talk? It might be just one word, help. That sentence will not be perfect. It will be messy. It might be in broken English. It might be in your first language. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you send it. That you break the silence. That you stop pretending. Because on the other end of that message, whether it's a person or a prayer or a post on a forum, someone is waiting to say back, I'm here. Tell me more. That someone might be me. That someone might be a stranger. That someone might be the person you least expect. But they are there. I promise you. They are there. My story has a happy ending. Not because my marriage is perfect. Not because my English is flawless. But because I learned to ask for help before it was too late. Your story can have a happy ending too. Not a perfect one. Not a pain-free one. But one where you are not alone. One where your voice, in all its broken beauty, is finally heard. So here is my final gift to you. A sentence from my blue notebook. The one I wrote on the 1-year anniversary of the 911 call. I called 911 for love. And love answered. Now it's your turn. You don't need to dial 911. You just need to dial someone. Or text someone. Or whisper to yourself in the mirror, I need help. And that's okay. Because asking for help is not weakness. It is brave love. And you, my friend, are braver than you know. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me through all 12 sections. Thank you for letting me be a small part of your English journey. Now go make your own call. Your own sentence. Your own brave love. So here's the truth that 911 operator gave me, you don't need perfect English to be loved. You just need the courage to say one word, help. That word saved my marriage. It can save your voice too. If this story touched something in you, if you felt that knot in your throat or that flicker of recognition, then don't let this moment disappear. Here's what I need you to do right now. Subscribe. Not because I asked. Because your future self needs more stories like this. One real life story. Every week. Slow English. Real emotions. Like this video, but only if you mean it. The algorithm needs to know that people want truth, not textbooks. Comment one word, help. Just that. Let me know you made it to the end. Let the next person scrolling see that someone else was brave too. And if you're ready to make your own call, to text that friend, to say that one true sentence, do it today. Not tomorrow. Today. Because your voice matters. Even broken. Even accented. Even scared. See you in the next story. Same channel. Same slow English. Same real life. I called 911 for love. And love answered. Now it's your turn.